Hey, YouTube Lokai Nama. Today I'm going to address the question of what planet represents the husband in a birth chart. Is it Venus or Jupiter? And I have a very special guest to ask these questions, a very famous heroic Dunmer named Rudrani. Rudrani, go ahead. Let's hear the questions.
Well, Vic, I've heard before that you stress Venus over Jupiter as representing the spouse, but I always hear Vedic astrologers say that it's Jupiter. And sometimes they explain themselves by saying that even though Venus has to do with relationships in general, it's Jupiter that really signifies the husband. What do you say about that?
Okay, so what are they really saying? They're saying that Venus signifies relationships, but not the most important relationship? Or Venus signifies relationships, but not the person you're related to? Doesn't seem very logical or intuitive. To me, it seems kind of counterintuitive. It seems something like saying, well, Honda makes engines, but they would never make a car.
Okay, well, they have some reasons for saying why Jupiter is the husband. Like, they'll say that Jupiter represents children, and the husband is the one who gives children to a woman. So that's why the Jupiter represents the husband.
I think women are the one who give children to the family, right? It's the wife who produces the children. The husband just gives a little catalyst, but the wife actually produces the child. So if the logic is that the person who produces the child should be represented by Jupiter, then it should be the wife who's represented by Jupiter. But even that would not be very true or reasonable, because Jupiter actually represents the newborn child itself. And then Jupiter represents the parents who are raising the child as well, but not specifically the husband of the wife, nor the wife. Venus is all about love. Love forms unity. Unity means partnerships, relationships, union. That's why Venus is the planet who signifies marriage and the marriage partner.
Okay, but still, everyone agrees that the fifth house has to do with love, and Jupiter is the karaka of the fifth house.
Okay, Jupiter is one of the karakas of the fifth house. The fifth house has three significant karakas: Jupiter, Venus, and even Mercury. Jupiter signifies children. That's what Jupiter has in common with the fifth house. Venus signifies love. That's what Venus has in common with the fifth house. Jupiter and Venus both indicate education and wisdom. That's what they also have in common with the fifth house. And Mercury signifies intellect. That's what it has in common with the fifth house. So just because Jupiter has something to do with the fifth house doesn't mean that it has to do with marriage, which is an offshoot of the fifth house. Anyway, right, Venus is the karaka for the seventh house, which has to do with actual marriage, partnership.
Okay, but I think the real argument that most of the Vedic astrologers give for having Jupiter signify the husband is that, at least in the traditional societies, the husband is the wife's guru, and Jupiter is the guru. Jupiter signifies guru.
Well, I don't have anything very nice to say about that. To me, this is cranky, old, myopic, one-sided outlook. The idea that the husband is the guru for the wife is great, but it's one-sided. The actual truth is that the spouses are gurus for each other. Anybody reads the Vedas, they'll see that it's not just the husband who's the guru for the wife. The wife is the guru for the husband too, and the whole family. For example, you can't possibly read Atharva Veda without encountering those statements. So just to say that Jupiter is the husband because the husband is the guru of the wife is a sexist view, or a one-sided view of the issue. The wife is also the husband's guru. So why doesn't Jupiter represent the wife for the husband's chart? See, what's weird about this is that the astrologers are saying if it's a woman's chart, then Jupiter represents the spouse, but if it's a man's chart, then Venus represents the spouse. Because it's only the husband who's the guru for the wife, but it's not the wife who's the guru for the husband. That's the kind of thinking that you got to get rid of. You got to get rid of its ramifications in astrology. If you're going to take the spouses in the role of the guru and therefore you look at Jupiter, that's fine, that's smart, that's great. But don't limit it to be that it's only in the woman's chart that Jupiter represents the spouse as a guru. But really, what's going on here is you can see that Venus and Jupiter are both gurus in Indian, mythology and way of looking at things. The spouses are gurus because Venus is also a guru. So do not take Jupiter to be the symbol of the spouse. It's the product of a cranky old worldview that doesn't work and isn't really Vedic, but it's a corrupt form of Vedic thinking. Take Venus to be the spouse. It's the simplest thing in the world. Venus represents love, partnership, unity, relationships, marriage, and therefore spouse.
Okay, but one last thing. I mean, what about the hundreds of charts where we can see that Guru does have something to do with the marriage? Are you saying that Jupiter doesn't have anything at all to do with marriage or the spouse?
No. Most certainly Jupiter has a lot to do with marriage and spouse, but does not represent the spouse or the marriage. Like, for example, Jupiter represents morals and religion. Marriage is practically, definitely, the most common religious function that any normal person participates in, right? The marriage contract, the marriage vow, attending a marriage ceremony is practically the only time most people do anything religious. Getting married is one of the only moral vows that most people ever take. So marriage is definitely a highly moral and significant thing. Therefore, Jupiter certainly has a lot of impact on marriage, but doesn't represent the spouse. It represents the trustworthiness of a partnership, the morality of a person, the religious experience of a person, which will also include their marriage, right? Every planet has something to do with your marriage and your spouse, or any topic. But there's also always got to be clearly one planet that's the main focal point, and the others which modify that main focal point. So the key focal point for the spouse and the marriage itself is Venus amongst the planets. Jupiter is definitely going to have something to do with it, of course. So is Mercury. So are all the planets in their own way. Like you also said about children. Jupiter represents children. That's a valid point. Children is something that has to do with marriage. So again, Jupiter is going to have some impact on marriage, definitely. But it's not the main significator for spouse, okay?
Okay, thank you very much for clarifying that, Vic. Hey, I just have a personal question. Can you send a reading to me out here in the electronic world?
Yeah, if you can get to the internet, you can go to vicdecara.com. And then you'll be able to click around there and get to my readings. You'll see the different kind of readings I offer. You just enter your data and so on, and I can send it to you.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. I'm going to do that right now.
Awesome. Great, Rudrani. Thank you for coming on my channel and asking this great question.